Hello, dear fundraisers, and hopefully some CEOs and bosses of charities as well, because I'm here right now. My name is Sean Triner from Oceanic, and I'm here with Greg Millar, who will be speaking at the FINZ conference, 30th of August to 1st of September. Hope to see you at FINZ conference. But whether you go to the conference or not, we're going to give you some really useful tips here on data. When I say we, I mean Greg. Greg, hello. Tell people a little bit about yourself.
Oh, hi, Sean. Great to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me on. I've been around fundraising for 30 plus years, both in New Zealand and in various parts of the world. I love fundraising. Had along the way a few really good things happen from fundraising. Great things happen for the organizations I've worked with. And I just wanted to share a few of the key learnings I've had over that 30 years. And for me, the driver is data. So I was a little bit nervous talking to you, Sean. You're a bit of the guru of data and fundraising. So anyway, there you go.
Well, thank you. I'm not really, I get somebody else to do the data usually, but yes. And I've had a sneak preview at your presentation. I know you'll change it about an hour before because we're always doing that, speakers at conferences, but I've had a sneak preview and there is some amazing stuff in there. Not many slides, but really, really interesting and fantastic information for people. So much so that I really hope that at that conference, you're going to attract some CEOs, CFOs, and board members, as well as fundraisers. I think it's really good. Obviously, we're not going to do the presentation now, but I'm going to ask you some questions to make sure it's useful for everyone, even if they can't make it to FINZ. We have a lot of people who aren't in New Zealand. And one of the things that I liked about the way you've done your presentation is it's starting off with like really big picture, with a big journey from measuring the impact of your organization. Like, what is the purpose, the point of your organization? What's your ambition? Where are you going? What are you trying to do? Through to, you know, how do you measure the individual things, and, you know, what's the right way of having the right database system and stuff like that. So I'm going to ask a question which isn't in your thing, but it's what happens when you don't stay on top of your data?
Well, I guess, as I say, 30 years, really it's only the last 10 years that I've found tools that really help me understand my data moment to moment, rather than waiting for a month for the finance department to come up with the report, which is at least a month old. And so what I find, if you don't stay on top of your data, you don't really know where you're at. You can't tell your CEO, your board members, hey, this is where we're at. This is why we need to invest, or this is the return we're getting, and be really confident about it. And then, you know, a month later share, or 2 months later, 6 months later, share something again, and they can see what you said becoming a reality. Otherwise, I think a lot of people look at fundraising and think it's a bit about luck, or it's a bit about, and yes, it's a lot about amazing donors. You know, that's, I don't want to get away from that. But if you don't map it out, if you don't have really good ways of tracking data, it can look like magic. It can look like it's not an investment strategy, when in fact we should follow a lot of the business rules about investment strategy, following what you're doing. And if you don't have the data, you know, it's basically, oh, that was very nice. Wow, that's amazing. And sadly, some boards think of it like that rather than tracking it carefully. The other thing with data is it sometimes tells you things you don't want to see. And it does sometimes make sure that you are willing to be vulnerable and see those things and address them rather than hide them. So I don't know. There's a lot of things. If you don't have data, you get lost and you don't know where you're going. So that's what it sums up.
No. I like the thing about how it used to be you wait for your finance reports. And I think one of the big problems with the finance reports is they'd they'd report back on how much money you spent on fundraising in that month and how much income that you got from fundraising, but you wouldn't have the tools that are, because quite often, apart from, for example, direct mail appeals, the amount of money that you spend in that month isn't necessarily related to the income that you get that month. So if you spend that money on acquiring monthly givers, you won't actually get any money that month from that, for example, or if you're working on bequests and things. So those numbers and using some of those tools like Power BI, which I know you're a big fan of, they make such a big difference on top of that. So yeah, I completely see where you're going from there. And also fundraising is often counterintuitive, right? So without those numbers, it's really hard to explain why you're doing things in a way. Yeah, we do send longer letters, but that doesn't make any sense. I don't like long letters, but here's the data. And the other thing you were saying as well, just in terms of measuring that data, being able to have access to the data, it's you've been in charge of campaigns where you've got a very small team, but you might be spending hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars on acquisition, which is literally every day you'll be spending $5, $10, $20, $40,000 on acquiring new donors or something every week. And you want to be on top of those, don't you? Not just for the bosses, but for the decision making on an almost daily basis.
Well, that's really interesting. And also, I have a dashboard around our regular monthly giving program. I'll show you a copy in the presentation for those that come. I've very badly taken out some of the data.
It's been renditioned in an appropriate way. Yes.
But the main, you can see exactly what you're looking at. What I do with that now is it's updated daily. And so when I have to get like an annual contract signed off for face-to-face, it can be, it can be in the millions of dollars to be fair. I just take that, put it in a little description to the CEO, may go to the board sometimes, and they can see it. They can see it this month when they have to make an important decision, when I have to say sometimes, and counterintuitively, the COVID 2 years ago, we were just coming out. I said, we have to invest, we have to go, we have to invest more than we've got budget for. And having those reports, Power BI reports that are just there handy, that I can describe, this is the average gift, this is our retention, we've improved retention. I know people's eyes sometimes glaze over when they hear these things, but you put it into a brief one-page report, have a few graphs, and people get it. They can see that we're not investing, that we're not going to see the return in the next 2 months, even 6 months, even 12 months. It comes thereafter. And I can describe that. And now we can even, with regular giving and face-to-face, we can see some of our donors coming through and making bequests, and very large bequests and legacies that have been left to us in the last 6 months. And so now with the data, we can properly talk to people about that and not just say, oh, I think we get a few legacies from it, or I think the return is over a longer term, or I've heard this. It's actually our own data. It's not even someone else's data, although before you get that data, and we've got 20 years of tracking regular giving in our organization. We were one of the first disability organizations to get into face-to-face and regular giving. But if you don't have access to that, your own data, find out the benchmarking that's around. There's a couple of different groups that do great benchmarking. When you were at Pareto, you were a huge beginner of the whole benchmarking. You can learn a lot, and there's some really good information in there to convince other people what the trends tell you, what good organizations are doing. And it also, other thing about data is I give really lots of feedback to our team to say, hey, you've hit that data point. I don't say data point, but you've got that many donors. That's fantastic, and it's quite motivating. It keeps, well, for me anyway, you know, I love what's the next thing, what are we going to hit, and I think the team like it. They give me positive feedback. So
yeah, it's good that you think that. No, they definitely do. And it does make a huge difference. And I think I really hope the bosses come along to this session as well. We get CEOs and CFOs. So if you haven't registered for FINZ conference, please do so if you're in New Zealand. If you're not in New Zealand, but you're nearby, which would be Australia, then it's worthwhile getting a cheap flight over and going to the FINZ conference. But wherever you are in the world, hey, you know what? Any excuse for a holiday in New Zealand, so come on. But you really want to try and get your CEO, CFO, or even board members, if they're taking part in fundraising decisions, get them along. It would be really useful. Thank you so much for your time today, Greg. Thanks for giving up your time to do the conference presentation as well. And thank you, dear fundraisers, for watching our short video. Bye-bye.
thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.